Welcome, everyone. My name is Adrian Farquharson. Thank you for joining our diversity discussions in partnership with Hall of Flowers. We're very glad that you're able to join us this afternoon. As we continue on with our discussions, we will be speaking with our next panelists, Mario Guzman of Sherbinskis and Christine Yi of Potli, as we discuss the Latinx and Asian voices in cannabis culture. Please welcome our guests.
Hi.
What's up? How are you both?
Hey, Adrian, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Pretty good. Thank you both for taking the time out to talk with us today.
Hi, Christine.
Hey, Mario.
To begin, let's talk about what led you both to want to enter the cannabis industry and start both your brands. Christine, with you, ladies first.
Yeah, I can start off. So for me, really, the memory that comes to mind and I always think of is really that one time I got way too high off edibles when I was in college. I don't know what the milligram dosage I took was, but I was high for over 2 days. And it was a very disempowering experience. And it turned me off of edibles for years. So I was purely smoking product. I was not consuming any edibles for a really long time. And so at that time when that happened and I went through this whole experience where I accepted death and everything, I didn't go, oh, I should start my own edibles company. But eventually down the line, a few years later, I thought back to that experience and how so many people have a similar story, and how I wanted to kind of reframe this dialogue around edibles as a whole and come up with diverse ones that didn't look like your typical brownie or chocolate or gummy. And so that's really the experience that comes to mind.
Nice. And Mario?
That's funny, Christine. I had a few experiences like that myself, so thank you.
Oh, we all.
For me, it's just, it was sort of like being in San Francisco, early 2000s, being part of the medical marijuana movement, and seeing flower that I grew really helping people in the community, specifically, strains that I was breeding. And it was just one day, I had a woman that was at a dispensary that had told one of the managers, hey, who is it that's growing this? And she kind of pulled me aside one day at the dispensary, and she said, hey, it's because of you donating this flower that I was able to save money to buy this special medical device that I needed. And now I'm able to sleep more at night. And it just really hit home for me. And it was at that moment that I kind of realized that I wanted to dedicate my life to this plant. And very shortly after, I was able to start Sherbinskis. And really it was just based off intent to want to help people. And I was a real estate agent by trade, and I was successful at that. But I decided to leave that industry and dive all the way into cannabis because I just felt it was a life worth living.
Yeah. Mario, let's dive more into your history and talk about what led you from the move from longtime cultivator to mainstream brand manager to, brand as big as Sherbinskis.
Short story is early on when genetics started to, Girl Scout cookie, I think was, after OG was culturally, had already made a huge wave globally. People were growing it from San Francisco all the way out to, Amsterdam. And early on, I realized that it was such a special genetic, and growers that had special genetics, say from Humboldt or at that time San Francisco, and it was getting more into the city. Instagram had just kind of become popular, and I was working with cookies at the time. So Burner at that time had 250,000 followers before anybody really, had a big following. And so our whole group, Cookie Fam, we started promoting each other, and culturally it became hot. So celebrities were talking about our flower, people on the street, rappers were rapping about it. So I mean, humbly I say this, but growers started to become celebrities in themselves, because we held the keys to something special that no matter how much money you had, whether you pulled up to the studio in a Lamborghini and you had, $250,000 in gold on you, if you didn't have what we called turkey bag swag, if you didn't have that, you weren't really cool. So I think with the brand and the evolution of it is, I thought I sat in that for a little bit, and I thought, this is fun, this is cool. You're moving around, you're meeting people, but ultimately, like, what is it that you want to do with this? And really, those thoughts and those intentions turned to helping people. And so I think that's when I felt a responsibility, knowing that I had something special in these genetics, and knowing that there wasn't certain laws in place, and doctors weren't able to really research it and advise people the way that a lot of bud tenders, even to this day, are. So I took it as a big responsibility for being someone that, I consider a gatekeeper of these genetics. These genetics really are at the core of everything we do in this industry. And I just wanted to carry that flag in a positive way. And I saw creating a brand, and also representing growers and representing just hard day, everyday working class guys and women, and turning that into a lifestyle. And I think I've been able to do that.
Next. Christine, talk to us about what led to your decision to launch Potli and your first product, which is honey.
Yeah. Honey is our first product. It's our flagship product. It continues our most popular. But when we started, my best friend Felicity and I were both born and raised in the Bay Area, but we didn't actually meet until we were randomly paired as roommates in college on the East Coast. And when we were kind of talking, this was 2017, big news on the street was recreationalization the following year. And we were just talking about how much we love the plant and how it's improved our lives and shaped us to be better people. And we wanted to get involved. And really, we didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. And so up until now, even, I feel like we're still kind of proving what we bring to the table to a lot of people, even though we've grown and we're in a lot of dispensaries now and we have a pretty wide product assortment. But really where we started was we looked at the products that were available on the market and we didn't see anything that our conservative Asian mothers would want to try. And we knew that, our moms were people who arguably had so much to gain from the health benefits of cannabis. Yet they would definitely never smoke. They would not eat any kind of like candy or confection-based edible. And we wanted to change that. And so Felicity's dad at the time had started beekeeping on behalf of her mother, who had asthma, and hyperlocal honey was really helpful for that. And so he just started beekeeping as a hobby, and we kind of just took over it and said, we're going to put weed in this and sell it, which was pretty easy to do in 2017 versus a couple months shortly after. But we wanted to just make something that even our conservative immigrant mothers would want to try. And so we started with the honey, and then we quickly got to understand that there's a market out there for edibles besides your typical gummy. So we got into olive oil, chili oil. Sriracha is a product that we launched about a year ago that's done really well. And we wanted to really bridge the gap between cannabis and the broader food industry.
Beautiful. Where do you both see the industry heading, and specifically in regards to product materialization?
Yeah. So I can go first. In terms of where I see the industry heading, I am very optimistic about savory edibles. That is where Potli plays, but I have seen other people kind of jump on. Atlas makes granolas, which are really great. Tempo makes these savory crackers. And I think just making edibles that are beyond this typical mold psychologically also then expands the use cases and the perspective that consumers hold space for when it comes to cannabis goods. And so I'm really bullish on savory edibles. I'm bullish on inhalants that use really, really low heat. So I've seen like inhalers and these kind of vape replacements or alternatives. Sprays, I think, could be big as well. And I think that as legalization happens on a more national scale, there's going to be less of an emphasis on being discreet. So when we think of flower and the accompanying smoke accessories, even things like clothing and wear, my good friends have a brand called Sunday School, which is like a smokewear inspired brand. But I think cannabis culture overall is going to become more mainstream, and there's just going to be less shyness around it. Broadly speaking, I think when we talk about like our California bubble and it not being taboo, it really that's California. It doesn't represent a lot of other areas within the country. So a lot of those tertiary accessories I'm really excited about too. And I think to the point of your question about not just the products, but also how consumers come to regard it, I think that there is going to be expansion on both ends of the spectrum when it comes to products. When you look at something like a Dosis or a Candescent, where it's kind of just like energy and focus and sleep and directly correlated to a specific type of effect, not necessarily a specific type of strain. But then I also see growth on the specialization perspective, because I think everybody as consumers, they want to get smarter about what it is they're consuming, where it comes from, and full transparency of that supply chain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to speak to a lot of the good points Christine made, I think for me, we're going to have so many new consumers coming into this space, not only in our state of California, but in every state. And I think also a lot more older people are feeling more comfortable going into a local dispensary. There's more access. So for me, what's coming up is, direct to consumer, a lot more of that, especially, we have a delivery company attached to my dispensary in Los Angeles. The numbers have gone through the roof with what we've been able to do, especially during COVID. But I think, dosing, we're seeing a lot of improvements with the dosing. I mean, even in the last year, you're seeing a lot of people dial it in a lot more, and also going down in dosages down to 2 mils or up to 5, and so people are feeling a lot more comfortable and getting a lot less of these bad experiences that Christine and I were talking about earlier. And I think that products that are just easy for people to use, different types of edibles, sprays, inhalers, new innovative ways to ingest. Most recently, like nano technology, you're seeing a lot of gummies now that are nano, and the absorption is much faster. You're able to get really all of the medicine. If you take 10 milligrams, you're getting 10 milligrams, and when it's passing through the liver, you're losing a lot of the medications, which is a lot of the current edibles are with that old technology. So these are just some of the things that I'm seeing in real time that I think are going to be a big difference, even with topicals and kind of the old generation of what products people would make. When the absorption rate is what it's supposed to be, it really is a game changer in a lot of the ways that we can ingest these products, and also the products are going to become available. So some of the things that I'm excited about.
Awesome. Let's talk about the focus for today is about diversity and inclusion. Do you both feel, when it comes to the focus on inclusion, that the industry has been disproportionately unfocused, like with the attention on just the white community or the Black community? Do you want to speak on, the representation for Asian community and Latinx community?
I think the conversation has been disproportionate to really talk white versus Black.
Yeah.
I don't
as well too,
Right. And I very rarely see mainstream topics around Latinx, Asian. But at the same time, I don't, speaking as an Asian person, Asian people are the least likely to be incarcerated because of cannabis. And I think historically, Asian communities have been the least impacted by the war on drugs. So while I feel that the conversation has been disproportionate, I feel that it has been appropriate to addressing the contrast and opportunity, at least in California. So it is disproportionate. Does it bother me, or do I feel like it's an injustice in any sense? No. Do I always feel that inclusion of other races and all that is good and healthy conversation because it doesn't just pit white versus Black? Yes. But yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
When I was just, what comes up for me is obviously last year the white versus Black, or just was a big issue for us in 2020, and it opened up a bigger conversation, and one that I've always felt part of, because when it came to, I'm half Irish, but I'm also Native American, and my father's from Mexico. So I've always felt, you know, I've always felt like I gravitated more towards people of color in terms of who I hung out with, who I was accepted by, and I didn't feel any different moving into the cannabis space. And I always felt, frankly, in certain rooms, maybe I was, even though I'm half white, I felt like I was always kind of someone that was maybe put into the box of people of color, if you would, and I associated more with that. When the conversation came up and a lot of the positive things that I saw with the Black community as they began to band together, first of all, speaking up against these injustices. And, obviously we've seen bits and pieces of this in our life, but obviously last year, what we all experienced was much different. But then you start to ask the questions afterwards, like, okay, what is going to come of this? What's changed? One of the things I really noticed is, hey guys, sorry about that. Anyhow, what I started noticing was in a positive way that people of color, mainly Black people, started to really group together in intelligent ways, and started to support themselves in new, innovative ways that I thought was great. But but I also didn't feel like I was part of that. I haven't been part of the discrimination, like from the white versus Black. I have been discriminated as a frankly, as a Mexican man and as a brown man. I've definitely felt discrimination in the cannabis industry specifically. I mean, let's face it, like a lot of, the people that were growing this, that started this industry, were white guys farming up in Humboldt. I mean, that's just a fact. And not, for many years, you didn't see a lot of Black people or brown people up in Humboldt. And that culture, really kind of moved into the cannabis space. And, that is also, a lot of people consider the mecca of where cannabis started. Yeah. But that being said, fast forward to now, and what I've been seeing, with the Black Lives Matter and what I was speaking to about Black people coming together, I wasn't seeing that in the Latino community, and I also wasn't seeing that in the Asian community. Just and it goes further into it goes further than that. But what I want to say was what's coming up for me, and just to bring it home is, it's look, I was never someone who I would ever consider like a public speaker or someone that would, start a brand. I never pictured myself being that person. I never, so it was always sort of like when I started speaking publicly, it was difficult for me. But then I realized, like, if I don't, who will? If I don't go and do this, who around me is going to do a better job? Who's going to, articulate it better than me? Yeah. I also realized how important and unique my voice is in itself. And, I might not be the most educated person, but, my passion is what really has always driven everything I do. And I'm passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about unity. I'm passionate about us moving past, all the racist bullshit, that we all been dealing with for so long, and actually getting to solutions. My answer is to, and this is one thing I'm actually working on right now. And to segue into another question is just what I feel I can do for the industry is I can speak up. I can be part of bigger conversations like this. I can contact the other Latino CEOs, people in the industry, whether you're a grower, whether you're an investor. And there is other groups out there, larger groups in the Latino community that are great. A lot of them consist of lawyers and investors or high-level business guys. I want to create, there's something I started last year called Passion Projects. And the first program I did was the community cleanup in Fairfax. And so to give you an idea of like how I'm taking action, we had 30 volunteers that went up and down Fairfax, the street my dispensary is on. And we picked up like 50 bags of garbage, and we were able to work together. And that didn't cost me a couple $100 in garbage bags and brooms and things. But I think what I want to see in the community and how I want to take action is I feel like I need to step up and be the leader that I am. The God-given leadership that I've been given in my community, to my family, to the people I work with. You know, in this day and age, a lot of people they look to their politicians for leadership. Right now, we don't have that. They look to their church leaders and the people in their community, spiritual leaders for leadership. Now, a lot of people don't have that because they don't have that contact, you know, with COVID. And so I think what's been coming up for me is not just for people of color, but for all people in our community. And I stand beside all people of every color, not to discredit any injustices that have been brought upon any of us. But I think it's our job to stand up, to have these conversations, and to me, to inspire other people that are on their way up to wherever they are in their career. You know, for me specifically in the cannabis space, and that goes back to like having conversations with the people that are on my farms that are working, you know, making the least amount of wage. Who's making the least wage in my whole company? You know, how can I connect with them? All the way up to, you know, my investors and anything in between, and also, you know, Latino people and that work for other businesses that are prominently coming up. You know, there's a lot of competition in this industry, and I know this is a little long-winded, but I feel like if there's anything that I really want to get across and why I decided to do this is for this exact message, is call upon everybody in the industry to look past the color of our skin and to realize that we are truly the human race. You know, we all got, you know, 2 arms, 2 legs. You know, we're all born the same. We're all going to live and die. You know, and I think that there's a lot to be said for that in terms of getting past. I don't even like to say the word because it means that it exists, which is stigma. You know, it's like, when are we going to not even have to have these conversations because we're not thinking on that level. We're thinking about how we can all work together. You know, and it's like that Bob Marley quote that comes up, and I'll be quiet after this, but you know, it's like, when are we going to get to the point when the color of a man's skin is makes no difference than the color of their eyes? And so I feel like that's my focus, you know, and that's what I want to bring to the cannabis industry. And the next program that I'm doing for passion projects is going to be I've been talking to George Lopez and a couple of other really people that I think can really help, especially, but I want to give back to the city of Los Angeles. I want to reach out to all the people in the cannabis industry, no matter what part you are, and form an organization that we can all support each other and that we can help each other grow within the industry. And we can also provide opportunities for each other within this group, and really just be proud of the fact that we are Latino, and also be proud of all the diversity in our industry. And also just want to say, like, when I got my first $1 million invested into my company, it was a personal check from a Korean man, you know, and another Japanese man named Jinkyu. I was one of the first people in the industry that had Asian investors. Obviously Asians are big investors in a lot of different spaces, but you hadn't seen a lot of, at that time, this was all private money. You weren't getting, you know, any money and then so they really believed in our vision, in my vision. And I've learned so much, you know, from their business practices, and I'm proud that, you know, part of the Sherbinskis Foundation has that culture integrated into it. So I just wanted to say that too.
Thank you very much, Mario. That was a great response to my question. Christine, I want to toss some questions to you. You're representing 2 groups, women and Asians. What do you want society to know about your community and its relationship with cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really proud to represent Asian people and women within this community. And I think what's important about it is that I just think the more diverse faces are partaking in the entrepreneurship within this industry, it also then speaks to the consumers of this industry, and really reinforces the fact that cannabis is for everyone. And the cannabis consumer can look like anybody, even from demographics that you might least expect it, which I do think Asian women kind of fall under. I think that if we think about the stereotypes of Asian women, it's like that we're caretakers, we're submissive, we're overworked, lacking creativity and being boring are also stereotypes that I've encountered a lot in my life. And I think cannabis really breaks the mold of all of those things. And so for that, I think that Asian women within cannabis can really have a lot to benefit, and just kind of reinforces this narrative of that, this is really for everyone, and there's something for everyone, whether it's something that you're specifically trying to treat from, a physical condition perspective or mental condition, or really just to connect with others or open yourself up. There's so much to gain. So I think that's just super important. And I think that for us at Potli, we're a very small team. We just had our first investment round. We're quickly growing. There's 6 of us on the team, and only 2 of us are full-time at this point. So, but with the 6 people, all 6 of us are women, and 4 of us are women of color. And so just to have that representation and to have that kind of input, I think is so important, and to have the diversity of experience, and to just employ other people within the industry who can come and bring that representation is really great. So I think in terms of leading by example, but also trying to make a point about who this product is for is really key.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of synchronization between your product offerings and traditional Eastern medicine? Do you draw from the past for your product inspirations?
Yeah, so some of the earliest dated uses of medical cannabis come from Taiwan and China. And so we really want to eventually make a nod to that heritage, and have an Asian cooking inspired cookbook is something that I'm really working towards, that pulls in pieces of that heritage. Even the root of where the word marijuana comes from, and all of those amazing things. But in terms of our product and how our heritage has translated over, I'll start with the honey, which honey in ancient Ayurvedic medicine is considered yoga vahi, or the most powerful vessel for herbal remedies. And so when we're initially thinking about making a cannabis infused honey, cannabis, which is really such a super plant and the ultimate healing herb, combined with the ultimate vessel based on Ayurvedic medicine, was really perfect. So it really is a nod to Eastern medicine at large. But in addition to that, when we rolled out things like our chili oil and our sriracha, and trying to just come out with Asian products, period, we wanted to infuse that heritage and remix it a little bit. So I think going forward, we actually, when we were creating Potli from 2017 to 2019, I don't think that we were thinking that much about our identity as Asian people. Really, we weren't. We launched a chili oil in 2019 in the fall, primarily because it was just, oils are easy to infuse. And we were just we already know how to infuse an olive oil. Let's make something a little bit spicy. And that was it. We didn't think that chili oil or chili crisps have been gaining a lot of popularity in last year. We didn't know that that was going to happen. And we never thought about making Asian products outright, because we were the market is too small. Who's going to buy this? It's really not critical. But this past year, we really, really thought about our role within the industry and what we can bring to the table in a really authentic way. And so I think going forward, you're going to see more and more Asian inspired products.
Awesome. Mario, can you speak on the challenges of running both a brand and a retail space? And how does the community relate to both?
Sure. I just wanted to say something to Christine. But I think it's really cool that you didn't start, your company with the notion of doing what you're doing now, but how your ethnicity kind of played a cool, important role in these new products that you're bringing out. So I just want to say, I thought that was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's super weird because it was unexpected, and in some ways, I feel the most shocking thing when I told people that I was going to move into the cannabis industry, because before I was in consulting, in retail, and very, very different. The first question I always got was what are your parents going to think? Did you tell your parents? What do they say? And so initially the reception of me starting a cannabis company was very much whoa, you have all these barriers in place, and how are you dealing with them? But then when we thought about how do we actually bring purpose and intent to this company, it really was the cultural aspect that opened up all these other opportunities for us. So it's a nice little paradox in how Potli as a company has grown and shifted a little bit. And I'm really happy that we're having these conversations, because these conversations and these panels were not happening 2 years ago.
No.
So
Anyhow, I just wanted to give you your props on that. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Can you speak on the differences and challenges between having a brand and then running a retail space?
For me, the brand was always about getting, I'm a flower guy, I'm a grower, my genetics are what is really the foundation of the brand. So it was never about kind of hoarding that and having it in like my set dispensaries. And I had those opportunities to do that with different groups. So I was always looking at like distribution and essentially, one of my main goals in being in the industry is to share like these genetics with as many people as I can. So there's one side of it for me, like with what my goals are with which is like genetics that I create and creating new experiences and new medicines that, I can experience and then I can share with other people, throughout the state, throughout the country, throughout the world, through seeds and different channels. But secondly, the dispensary is such a huge part of the evolution of that, because having a flagship, I only have one dispensary, and that's in LA on Fairfax. But having the flagship, it's really changed a lot for me in terms of how people view the brand, because I always, even before I had a logo, Sherbinskis was known because I was starting to tell people in these dispensaries, hey, I'm Sherbinski. Can you write Sherbinski gelato? Can you write Sherbinski? So people know that this is from me. And so that is kind of what created the brand itself. But now people and especially being in Los Angeles, it's a destination. So people that come from all different states, different countries, they'll come in and they get to experience what the brand's about. They get to, and to me, it not only is it a different way that they're not just looking on my Instagram or they're not just like smoking some of the flower, but they get to go in, they get to smell, see, feel all the senses. But it also really, as those people go back to their different states, their different countries, or just people that want to be involved in the brand somehow, whether it be a product, it's just done so much in terms of the way that I'm able to communicate. And so I just feel like now that I've had the dispensary, because I've been distributing to the California market, for 15 years now, 15 plus years. And so having the dispensary open up in 2019, it was just really a game changer for me. Again, just having that flagship, and more than anything, being able to show people what the brand's all about, from the aesthetics of it, and it's really opened up a lot more doors for me.
Absolutely. We've heard hints that 2021 may be the year of the terpenes. Do you have any thoughts on that matter? This is something you both can speak on as well.
You want me to take that one, Christine?
Yeah.
I've been diving into terpenes, for years now. The study of it, the extraction of terpenes, understanding the different applications of it, because I sort of realized a few years ago that in terms of terpenes and terpene extractions, in the cannabis industry, I think one of the biggest reasons why I've been able to be successful is there's all these products being made, right? But it really boils down to the genetics, because it's sort of like you can go into a pipe shop and get a bong or a pipe or rolling papers, but it's like, what are you putting into it? And so from there, I realized the importance of these different genetics and what the medicinal values of those were. So I started to think from an intellectual property point of view, how I could own the different extraction processes and extracting the terpenes, having those that are actually mine from genetics I created. And obviously there's, no one's able to quantify it or put into like exact words why gelato is so widely accepted and loved. But there's something in the recipe, if you will, that's special. And so I think obviously people strip it down and they want to, look at all the different compounds and then the terpenes. I believe in the entourage effect of all of them, but there's the terpenes itself and what the medicinal values of those are. There's still so much to be studied, but we're already, like I partner with Abstracts, and they did They got a $500,000 machine that they invested their own money into. No investors, but all of this was to take a 3D look at what was previously a two-dimensional view of what the terpene profile would be. So there's all types of monoterpenes that hide behind these old ways of looking at terpenes. And so where I'm going with it is by guys like Abstracts that I'm partnering with that are identifying what it, for lack of better words, like what is it that makes gelato gelato? And it's through these studies that I feel are like, I want to be part of and what excites me. And, you know, Abstracts, even a couple of years ago, they were still putting their own money in. And now it's coming out that like terpenes are supposed to be one of the, if you have a terpene company or extractions, it's supposed to be one of the best investments for 2021, to speak to your point. But I think the reason why is, you know, not only with like the fingerprint that you can get from these type of identifying like the terpene profiles in a plant, what that does is it also opens up a lot more applications for, you know, like for, I think there's 4 major flavor houses like in the world that flavor everything that we eat, from, you know, from potato chips to drinks to yogurts, and they make these flavors, not all of which are natural, obviously. And so there's a lot of studies that go into plants and to creating these profiles that then, for example, let's say I have a Sunset Sherbet botanical terpene profile, and I'm able to take like what sherbet is from a THC version and make it, you know, and from cannabis, and make that identical profile using plants. And then I'm able to go to somebody like Pepsi or Coke or these different organizations and say, hey, I have the IP for the actual flavor profile for Sunset Sherbet. And then you open up ice creams, drinks, all these different, you know, multi-million-dollar industry part of business, that this is definitely where this is going. So that's just one little piece that I want to share with you guys of how I see terpenes evolving, especially as legality and as we move towards federal legalization. Terpenes are from cannabis plants are going to be more and more widely used in different healthcare products, beauty industry, and so on.
That's an interesting point. We definitely got to speak more on that later, for sure. Christine, what's next for Potli, and what is your aim to accomplish with Potli culturally?
So, I mean, next in terms of product, I talked about doing things with more of an Asian influence. Just to tag along the last question, what really differentiates our products and the stuff that goes into them is that our raw inputs from the food perspective, so like the olive oil, honey, all of that is raw, minimally processed, cold pressed. And so it's really, really true to the actual plant. And then the inputs that we're putting in from an extract perspective is, except for our nano E extract, which is just the one-off, everything else is full spectrum, single origin, which is very rare of edibles. And for us, that really is us trying to preserve the entourage effect and have diversity within those cannabinoids and those terpenes, but really bring an experience that's close to the plant, as opposed to just pulling in a ton of isolates and dumping as many, you know, a high milligram concentration as possible. We want to be really thoughtful about the formulation and making sure that we're offering something that really is, I hate to say the term because it's overused, but farm to table. So I'll just throw that out there. But yeah, in terms of growth of products, I think just continuing to bring that integrity and that closeness to the plant, but then also focusing on content and recipe development and making books and making videos for cooking. We really, really want to be partnering this year in terms of collaborations with mainstream food brands and personalities. So we would love if Potli, as a household brand that makes pantry items and everything is manufactured in-house, or brands who are trying to kind of enter the space or play in the space or think about what their role is, to kind of come to us and partner with us in making the cannabis version and that translation of whatever their product is in the rest of the world. So that's really an area that I'd like to grow in as well. But overall, I think what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish here is to increase people's standards for edibles. I think typically when people think of an edible, they like eat a gummy, and if it doesn't taste bad, that's a good gummy. Which I think that we can hold a much higher standard when it comes to edibles and food. I think, you know, everything that happened within the lounge and the cannabis dining space last year was really interesting because it is that mainstream translation. Like, what really is more of an accepted cultural notion than going into a restaurant, having a joint and eating your food at the same time and being able to do that outdoors. And so for us at Potli, bridging the gap between cannabis and broader wellness, yes, but specifically cannabis and specialty foods, and all the really amazing notions there in terms of pairing and how food tastes better and textures are more interesting when you're a little bit high, and how different flavor profiles can complement each other, and how having an edible that tastes like weed is not a bad thing. Just those flavor profiles have to be complementary, and work in harmony and work together, and just raising consumer standards from the food perspective is what we're really trying to do.
Absolutely. Mario, same question to you. What's next for Sherbinskis?
Last year, you know, Q3, Q4, I was really focusing on pheno hunting and finding new medicines, new genetics.
We'll talk about that a little bit. Pheno hunting, for those who may not be even aware of what that is.
Yeah, you know, so different ways to grow. A lot of people grow using clones. On larger scale, seeds are something that's more popular. But typically, it starts with a pheno hunt, and you have male or female seeds. You pop the seeds, and as they grow, they show whether they're male or female. The process that I go through with seeds is, you know, the last pheno hunt I did was 2,600 seeds. And a good way to put it is, imagine if your mom and dad had 2,600 kids, and then you separate the males from the females, right? Yeah. Now within those, so that normally it's around 50-50. So then you'd have, you know, you've got 1,300 brothers, you've got 1,300 sisters. Now within those groups of your parents, you're going to see about 4 or 5 different subgroups in that, within that what we call. So what I'm saying is no matter the child is going to fit within one of those groups. In other words, one of the groups is going to look like you, kind of your build. You're going to look like, you know, whether it's mom or dad. Another group's going to look more like mom or dad. You know, then there's going to be a mixture, and then there's going to be the tall and the short. There's going to be everything in between. And so, but then the genetic variant doesn't really go past that too much. And so each one that you pick kind of falls within this group. So what I do and what I specialize in is going in to these different groups and identifying. It's sort of like, hey, who's got the nice long pretty hair? Who's got nice skin? Who's got the athletic build? And you start to identify these features that are favorable. And what I do is I'm able to identify these. A lot of them is through terpene profiles, structure. So you're looking at the plants, and the ones that are weak, they're not growing, they're automatically they're out of the race. The ones that are growing quickly, they've got you know, good structure, they're building, you know, big wide fan leaves, and everything is growing the way that you'd like. Then they go into a different group. Then as you flower them, which ones have color, which ones are more showing more trichomes, then you go into another group, and then you start to weed out, and you start to find, and then it comes down to bag appeal and flavor, and then I go all the way with these 2,600 seeds I pop. I take all these final keepers. I think it was down to like 100, and I put them through full THC testing, full terpene profile analysis, which I did with abstracts this last year, and then you're able to take the pheno hunting. Again, the pheno is basically that one child from those parents, like, right? We call that a phenotype. And we're trying to identify the ones that have all these traits. And then what's funny is they can have all these traits, but then when you smoke it, it doesn't we call it wet the whistle. But when you smoke, if it doesn't make your mouth water, then it basically it doesn't make the cut. So I've been doing a ton of that. It's what I'm good at. Obviously building the brand, I've had to go out and and shake a lot of hands, hold a lot of babies. And with doing that now, though, I've sort of built the team. Now I really want to go back to what got me started, which is just going back in, working with the plants, what I love to do, finding amazing genetics that I can share with the world. And so I'm happy that I can move. I've moved into a lot of different positions building the brand. And now I'm able to, I guess, take a few steps forward by taking a few steps back and falling back into my true passion. So I'm excited, and I'm happy for the opportunity to be able to do that in 2021.
Absolutely. My last question for you both is, this Wednesday, we have a new incoming presidential administration. What would you both like to see from that administration in regards to cannabis and wellness as a whole for, just to start for 2021? You
want me to take that one, Christine?
Why don't you go first?
For me, it's a tough question. But just to stick to the basics, I'd like to see, obviously, the push for a federal legalization. I'd like to see, us to continue to be able to operate state by state and to create our own guidelines. One of the things that concerns me is this notion of federal legalization, but then them interfering with how we operate state to state, which I think is one of the coolest things about how it's done in these different states. It's a pain in the butt operationally, because it's basically going to another country every state. There's all these different rules and regulations that you have to change. But I like the fact that each state is able to govern itself. I'd like to support the people that are pushing for the right type of laws to be changed, not just ones that are driven by special interest groups, but ones that are going to be better for the people and for the consumers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think I do share your concern with the implications of federal legalization, although it does have its benefits. I think the one area that would really, really make a difference with this administration is to allow cannabis businesses to kind of operate more like a traditional business. So all the tax implications, all the financial instruments that are available to cannabis companies, and access to just be able to be an operator or a business owner within this industry. If all those things kind of mirrored more of a traditional business, and regulation in such that it protects consumers and the quality of the products that they're getting stays in place, but regulation in terms of how we can operate as a viable business and a profitable business, I think is really important. So if there's support around that kind of infrastructure, I'm all for it.
Awesome.
Agreed. Banking. God.
Thank you both for taking the time out to speak with me today as well. It was a great topic, some really insightful answers. Where can people find more about you and your brands before we go?
Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at GetPotli, GetPotli, and getpotli.com. We also have a hemp-derived CBD line, potlishop.com. You can also shop it at Mary's Marketplace. And our cannabis goods you can find at Sherbinskis on Fairfax. So
Awesome.
definitely find us over there.
Yeah, and for me, come and check out our dispensary if you're in LA at 345 North Fairfax. We'd love to see you guys. Sherbinskis.com has a lot of our merchandise and updates on what we're doing. My Instagram, you can either visit Sherbinskis or Sherbinski415, which is me. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for having me on. It's great to talk about, have these kind of discussions, who I think are really important. And thanks, Christine and Adrian, for having me, and Hall of Flowers.
Thank you both as well.
Well,
take care, guys.
Have a good one.
Bye. All right, to our guests who are still waiting around, tune in for our next conversation, which is Life After Sports, which will feature Al Harrington of Viola Brands and Chris Ball of Ball Family Farms next. Stay tuned.